Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Maddie from Mind Over Madeline. I always forget my name every single time I do this, so we'll see if that ever changes, I guess. I am doing my second Psych Saturday today. I'm going to go ahead and apologize in advance because there's going to be a lot of weird noises in the background. I just turned off my AC, but it is thunderstorming. I thought they were fireworks, but it's raining. Like, I can hear the rain very, very clearly. So, it's raining. That's fine. You're probably going to hear my guinea pig again. My hamster is totally on his wheel right now. He never gets on that thing unless I'm, I guess, doing this. I've never seen him on that before in my entire life, so glad he's having fun, I guess. I think that's hail. So, one little change. My hair's different. My hair is now silver. It's really hard to tell. It's like white around the roots, which honestly I feel. But whenever I put it half up, it's like almost a blue tint. If you see this light here, it's my computer. I don't know, but I really like it, I think. I also have a metal roof, in case you couldn't hear. Wild, wow. So today's video is going to be on the Nuremberg Code, because what the Nuremberg Code is based around is the Nuremberg Trials. Now I'm going to go ahead and explain what those are. The Nuremberg Trials were the trials that took place after World War II to persecute the war criminals from World War II, basically. That's a very broad way of explaining it. However, how this fits in is that, don't worry, I fixed it. Let's start from the beginning. The Nuremberg Trials took place between 1945 and 1946. It started on November 20th, 1945, and ended on October 1st, 1946. A lot of information with this is going to be very cloudy because there's a lot of information. I couldn't dream of putting it all into this video being my second video I've ever made in my entire life, because that's just not feasible. I don't think I can do it quite yet, but I would like to cover more of that later on. I would like to make an entire video kind of really breaking down the timeline and what exactly happened. But what I want to talk about in this video is the Nuremberg Code. The Nuremberg Trials were, again, this is a little interesting, they were 12 trials that took place to persecute these 12 war criminals. I'm not gonna list off their names because I'm gonna be honest, I couldn't dream of pronouncing their names. And that's just the truth. But there's actually 13 trials, and the first trial that took place was the trial of major war criminals, and then the 12 trials that took place from, this included doctors, researchers, generals, all kinds of people who had a very direct relationship with murdering large amounts of prisoners from concentration camps in World War II. The verdicts of these trials, again, I can't go into all of them. I'm going to kind of just sum it up as briefly as I can. Out of the 12 defendants, I am 99% sure that 10 of them were sentenced to death by hanging. I watched a documentary on it called Prosecuting Evil. It is a very, very good documentary. It's on Netflix. It is about a person who was directly involved in the trials. That documentary was very good. It was very heartfelt. It was very emotional. I would definitely suggest it to everyone who's watching this if you want to get a deeper look into the trials themselves, because it's very, very informational. What I find interesting about these trials is that most of the defendants 100% believe that they were not guilty of their crimes. And this is not because they did not carry out the crimes, but they did not think that they were guilty because they were following orders of authorities. From their point of view, I can see why they would feel that way. They would have probably had to convince themselves of that, thinking, oh, well, this is good because I'm being told to do this by someone who knows more about this than me, someone who's in higher power than me, but obviously still wrong. Now, of course, the main person who should have been brought to justice in these trials was, of course, Adolf Hitler. However, as most people know, in the final days of World War II, he committed suicide. So he was unfortunately not able to be brought to justice. Everyone really wanted justice where it can be served. I would say that justice was served where it could be. Again, I'm not going to go into crazy detail about the Nuremberg Trials because there's a lot of information about it. Like, too much for me at the moment. If I were to make a video on it, it would take at least an hour. It'd be basically a podcast. But that's something I could do in the future if y'all want me to. Now, something that I do want to talk about slightly more detail is the things that these people did on a very broad scale. So, a lot of these people who were tried in the Nuremberg Trials were doing a lot of experiments. There were 3 major types of experiments that were done by Nazis during World War II. The first category was experiments that were dealing with the survival of military personnel. So what I mean by this is people were doing these experiments in order to test conditions that their military might be exposed to. For example, one thing that they did was they would test and see how some prisoners' bodies reacted in higher altitudes, like in airplanes, parachuting out of them. Another thing they did in this category was they would do freezing experiments to see how to possibly treat hypothermia. And another thing that they did was, for some reason, they wanted to see if they could make seawater drinkable, which the only thing I could really assume that they were wanting to do with that is if they got stranded where the only water that they had available to them was seawater. Of course, you can imagine that these prisoners obviously did not want to aid in helping their military in this way, because obviously they were experimenting on these people and hurting them. It was not good. The next category of experiments was experiments to test drugs and treatments. They would test immunization compounds and antibodies on people for the prevention of diseases like malaria, typhoid fever, yellow fever, typhus, tuberculosis, and also infectious hepatitis. They also tested bone grafting on prisoners. I don't even know if I would call them patients or prisoners anymore, because they're not treating them as patients. They're treating them as nothing. They would also expose prisoners to mustard gas to see if there was any type of antidote that they could develop from this research. And the last category of experiments that I want to talk about, I feel is very important because I feel like a lot of people have heard of it, or at least one specific part of it, and that is experiments to advance Nazi racial and ideological goals. One of the most famous people who did these types of experiments is, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Joseph Mengele. I hope that's right. What he did was he would do something that a lot of people know as the twin experiments on twins of various ages. He did this in Auschwitz. Another person is Werner Fischer. He wanted to see how different races would withstand contagious diseases. A lot of scientists and doctors in this category would also have a lot to do with sterilization. A lot of Nazis' main goals was to perfect a method for mass sterilization of Jews and the Roma, which is gypsies. That way, because they think that they are imperfect, they think that they are racially and genetically undesirable. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the twin experiments. So, it's very interesting that something related to this topic actually just happened. So, on July 4th, 2019, someone named Eva Kor passed away. She was a survivor of Joseph Mengele. She passed away. She was 85. Her and her sister Miriam were twins that he had experimented on in Auschwitz. She actually died during her annual trip to Auschwitz this year. She founded the Candles Holocaust Museum. Now, Candles is an acronym for, I'm going to go ahead and read this because it's just kind of a mouthful. Candles is an acronym for Children of Auschwitz Nazi Deadly Lab Experiments Survivors. So she is the founder of the Candles Holocaust Museum. One thing that she has really strived for is she is an advocate for forgiveness for people who committed heinous activities during this time. She's very inspiring. She was a public speaker and she just passed away. So it's very sad. She was a very strong woman because she went through a lot and she devoted her entire life to spreading a message based on her experience. And I just think that that's very inspiring. That's very honorable. Her legacy is going to live on in her museum, though. So that's good, at least. One more thing that I want to talk about in this video is what the Nuremberg Code actually is. And again, I'm going to get more into the significance of the Nuremberg Code in relation to the Belmont Report, if that makes sense, in my last video. I just kind of wanted to touch on the trials, the experiments, and the code itself. I'm probably going to go ahead and read this and paraphrase it just because it's a lot. There are 10 specific rules for the Nuremberg Code. The code basically states, voluntary consent is essential. The results of any experiment must be for the greater good of society. Human experiments should be based on previous animal experimentation. Experiments should be conducted by avoiding physical and mental suffering and injury. No experiment should be conducted if it is believed to cause death or disability. The risks should never exceed the benefits. Adequate facilities should be used to protect subjects. experiments should be conducted only by qualified scientists. Subjects should be able to end their participation at any time. And the scientists in charge must be prepared to terminate the experiment when injury, disability, or death is likely to occur. What this is basically saying is no matter what, whenever you are doing any type of human experimentation, you have to put the person or the people or the subjects, whatever you would like to call them, first. They are before the experiment in every way, shape, and form. Something that is associated with the Nuremberg Code that we talked about in my Psych 101 class is primum non nocere, which means first do no harm. That is the biggest thing about research, is the first priority is to not do any harm to anyone in the experiments. If an experiment involves someone being hurt, killed, disabled, or even being uncomfortable for that matter, the research, it's not worth it. The benefits do not outweigh the consequences. And honestly, I just find that to be very important. You should always have full consent the entire experiment. But I think that that's where I'm going to kind of end this one. Again, I just want to kind of touch on the Nuremberg Code and how it is important. But I wanted to talk about what experiment took place in order to kind of put the Nuremberg Code into effect, as well as affect the Belmont report that we will talk about later. There will be one more video about another experiment, the last experiment that I want to talk about. And then the last video is going to be on the Belmont report and all about it, what is really going to kind of drive this home. Why and how are these experiments that we are doing on people safe? What is making them worthwhile? What is making them something that we can be proud of as researchers? But yeah, I just kind of wanted to talk about that because I know a lot about this, and this is one of the only things I know a lot about because I love it. So I just wanted to talk about it. But if you're still here for this part of the video, thank you for watching. If you want to hear more about it, please subscribe. Comment below if you have any suggestions for any more Psych Saturdays or any other videos that I could put up during the week. But yeah, thank you for being here for this, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!